Hey Twisters, it's time to break down the second round matchup here in the 2022 Stanley Cup Playoffs between the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning. Hope you guys are fired up for this one. I certainly am as well. You know I'm rooting for the Panthers here, but this is going to be an absolutely nasty, hard-hitting, physical series. I can't be any more excited for this one here because we've been looking forward to this one ever since they met in the first round last year. So the way that I'll break down this preview, first of all, playoff profile for each team, taking a look at how they performed in the first round. Then we'll look at the regular season series between these two teams. 5 things to watch out for in this second round matchup. And then I'll give my overall outlook and prediction here. Of course, I want to know your predictions for the series down in the comments down below. I also want to extend a special thank you to everybody who's recently joined us here, whether you've been discovering us through the live streams, watching videos like this one, or have through like word of mouth discovered the channel. Guys like Off the Wall Hockey, John has been sending people over here, so thank you, John, and thank you everybody for joining us. Hopefully we can have more fun reacting to the playoff madness together and interacting with each other through the off season and beyond. Okay, before I actually start with the playoff profiles for each team, I do actually want to acknowledge my prediction because if you watched my playoff predictions video a couple weeks ago, I did expect this matchup, and I said the Lightning would win. I'm not going to go back on my word. I'll still stick by that, but here it's really about me presenting the arguments in favor and in opposition of each team advancing here. So you're going to get unique takes, perspectives, and insights that you won't get from the mainstream hockey media out there. So that's why we're doing what we're doing here on Twisted Wrister Hockey. So I'm still sticking with the Lightning, but I'm going to break this down, all right? So first things first, let's start with the playoff profiles for each team. We're going to start with the Panthers here. So they won 4-2 in their series over the Washington Capitals. They battled back from down 2-1, almost 3-1 really here, but they saved their bacon and they're moving on. One huge reason was because of Carter Verhaeghe, yes, the former Orlando Solar Bear great. So he had an absolutely historic and monster series for the Cats. 6 goals, 6 assists in those 6 games, so 12 points. That is a franchise record for points in a series. And in the last 3 games, guys, this is nuts. He had 5 goals and 4 assists, including the Game 4 overtime winner, the game winner in Game 5, and then the series winner in overtime in Game 6. When was the last time anybody did that? That is something we probably haven't seen in maybe decades. Second of all, the second line for the Florida Panthers was actually pretty quiet in this series. Sam Bennett, Jonathan Huberdeau, and Anthony Duclair combined 2 goals and 6 assists in those 6 games. At least they were defensively responsible out there or efficient enough in their own end. They were a +8 in the series, but Duclair was even scratched for Game 6, and you could hardly even notice the guy for a lot of the series. Jonathan Huberdeau finished second in scoring, or tied for second, in the NHL in the regular season here. He had 17 shots on goal, so he got some opportunities, and he is a pass-first player. Let's keep that in mind. But he did also throw 19 hits, and Bobrovsky, even strength, had a .943 save percentage when Hubie was on the ice. So at least he was doing some other things out there to keep things even keel for his team. Lastly, Florida did a good job of settling in defensively in games 4 through 6, so they finished the series playing a little bit better in their own end. One huge reason, of course, Flying Fluffy out there, Jaws, his channel always points this out. They needed to break up that pairing between Mackenzie Weegar and Aaron Ekblad, and they finally did that. They put Weegar with Gustav Forsling, who's been maybe the best defenseman for the Panthers this year, and then Ekblad played with Ben Sherratt, so the results certainly did pan out for them there. Bobrovsky locked things down, even though he gave up a couple of goals here and there. Yeah, he let in a soft one as well, but things actually looked a little bit better in the Panthers' end, and Bobrovsky was a piece of that, and certainly those 2 pairings there. I think that's what they have to roll with against the Tampa Bay Lightning. One thing, though, I want to point out is the injury to Mason Marchment. This guy had a breakout season, primarily, I think, on Florida's third line, which at times this year was absolutely unbeatable. He had 18 goals and 29 assists on the season, and Andrew Burnett has said that he is doubtful for Game 1, so certainly impacts the depth scoring for the Panthers, even though they have a lot of that to go around. Now for the Tampa Bay Lightning, as you guys know, they overcame a 3-2 series deficit to triumph over the Toronto Maple Leafs 4-3. First thing I want to point out is their new third line was a huge difference maker in that series, especially offensively. So we're talking about Ross Colton, game winner in the Stanley Cup final last year, Nick Paul, and Brandon Hagel. So those 3 players there, 2 of which were acquired at the trade deadline, by the way. 6 goals and 7 assists. That doesn't sound like a whole lot over a 7-game series, but when your third line can give you a goal a game, while a lot of your other top-end talent out there, I think of Killorn and also Anthony Cirelli too. Those guys were defending a whole lot this series. So having your third liners out there come through offensively, that certainly pays dividends while your other guys take care of the larger responsibilities in their own end. Second of all, Andrei Vasilevskiy didn't exactly look like a Conn Smythe winner in that series against Toronto. Yeah, they are definitely a vaunted offense, the Maple Leafs are. Vasi ended up with a 3.04 goals against average and an .897 save percentage. And even strength, he definitely let in some suspect goals from what I saw here. Game 5, Nylander handcuffed him to score the go-ahead goal there. The second goal in Game 6, he tries to knock the puck out of the crease with his glove, and that trickles in. He gets sort of fooled on that third goal by John Tavares. He tries to see around McDonough, but he's down in the butterfly for a really long time there, too, after Tavares had circled the net. So I thought that was kind of a bizarre sort of approach there. Also left the net, the top half of the net, empty with the waved off Tavares goal in Game 7. So not exactly on top of his game in those moments. But you also do have to consider that he was stone cold in Game 6 of overtime. And in Game 7, when it really did matter most, yeah, there was the Tavares waved off goal. But that aside, I don't fault him for the Riley goal whatsoever. And so he played fantastic there, and the Tampa defense really swarmed. But there are some moments there where I think that Vasi can get got. Lastly, Victor Hedman, who also won a Conn Smythe, has been excellent so far. He was on the ice for 5 goals against with the Maple Leafs, but considering how much he played in the defensive zone 5-on-5, he actually held his own pretty well. Vasi was able to save a higher percentage of shots out there with him on the ice. He was also very integral to the Lightning's power play. He had 2 goals and 2 assists with a man advantage, so 4 points out of those 7 power play goals for the Bolts. He was also second on the team overall with 7 points. And then lastly, we have to consider the injury to Braden Point. So is he going to play against the Florida Panthers? Things looked really ugly there in Game 7 when he injured his leg in the first period, and then he tried coming out for the second, and that didn't exactly go according to plan. He was hunched over, kind of wincing in some pain there on the bench. We do hope he gets better ASAP, but even so, this guy is clutch. Having him out for even a game or two can really influence this series. In the last 5 years, he leads all postseason players with a total of 38 goals, so an absolute monster player in the playoffs. So now let's revisit the season series briefly here. So the Panthers were 2-1-1 against the Lightning, so 1 overtime loss. Tampa was 2-2. Florida outscored Tampa, or the Cats outscored the Bolts here 19-15, or in regulation only, it was 18-15. But you got to take this with a big grain of salt here, okay? Because first of all, they only played each other once in 2022 on April 24th. That was a game in which Tampa just wiped the floor with the Panthers 8-4. But remember that Florida had already won the division, and I think they were basically sealing up the first overall seed in the conference there. So they kind of had been cruising through the rest of the way. That game, by the way, had 90 penalty minutes, so certainly a precursor to what we can expect here. And these two teams, of course, met in the first round of the 2021 playoffs, with the Lightning taking the first 2 games in the series and eventually triumphing in 6. And yes, that was also particularly nasty. Now let's get into 5 things to look out for in this series. I think really the first factor here, the Panthers might have a chance if Bobrovsky can somewhat match Andrei Vasilevskiy. We already talked about Vasi, but here with Bob, in that series against the Washington Capitals, he had a 2.79 goals against average and a .906 save percentage. One thing to consider here was the Panthers' penalty kill was not that good, so at least even strength, Bob held his own. And again, even if he let in a softie later on in that series, games 4-6, he would make some key saves down the stretch. So he was making saves that you need in those critical moments, and that's one thing that helped Florida win that series. But really, we have to look at history here. Bob struggled against the Lightning greatly in 2021. Yes, he beat them in 2019 as a member of the Blue Jackets, but a night and day performance between those 2 postseasons. So what is his leash? How long is that? Does Andrew Burnett consider going to Spencer Knight if things are going to hell in the first couple of games like they did in game 1-3 in that series? Knight came in and played particularly well, but he wasn't that good in the regular season series. So I think it's up to Bob here to try to match Vasilevskiy. Factor number 2 here, can the Panthers stay out of the penalty box? This is going to be a nasty series. I already mentioned the Panthers didn't do a good job on the PK against Washington. It was just 70.8%. Let's look at that series last year. Okay, so the Panthers committed over 6 penalties per game, 17 minutes plus in the box per night, and Tampa converted on 40% of their power plays against the Panthers. So that is one huge factor that this series could hinge on. But you also have to remember that Brayden Point could be injured, and so that is a bit of a blow to the Tampa Bay Lightning power play. Factor number 3, let's talk about 2 players to look out for in this series, 1 per team. Let's start with the Bolts here. So Mikhail Sergachev, okay? So you think about the Florida Panthers, they can score in waves. They have lots of depth out there. So the top end talent, guys like Victor Hedman, Ryan McDonough, they're going to be in charge of shutting down some of the top attackers for the Panthers. But as I mentioned earlier, if a guy like Marchment is healthy, even Lundell, you also have Sam Reinhart out there. There's a lot of depth scoring to the Florida Panthers, so Sergachev is going to have to, neutralize that a little bit. And one thing that concerns me about his game is that in the playoffs, he's very turnover prone. He had 8 giveaways against the Toronto Maple Leafs in round 1 here. You look at the previous 2 postseasons, and yeah, he was giving the puck away quite a bit. You don't want to be turning over the puck against the Florida Panthers, who can probably play the strongest transition game of any team in the NHL. They will make you pay with those odd man rushes out there. So I think a lot hinges on his performance there. But at the other end of the ice, he did put up 7 goals and 31 assists in the regular season. So he adds a little bit of depth scoring from the blue line for Tampa Bay. And then for the Florida Panthers, you wouldn't really expect me to say this, but Patrick Hornqvist, I think that he could really be a difference maker in this series. Yeah, he had a goal and an assist against the Capitals. Not the most glamorous. He is 35 years old and playing primarily in a 4th line role, but it's the role that he plays. He gets in front of the net, he tips the puck in, he stuffs home the rebounds. The Panthers need to do some of that against the Lightning. You look at how they were able to clog up the lanes in Game 7 against the Maple Leafs, especially in that 3rd period. So you need some of that physical assertion in front of the net to break through to get in Vasi's face too. So I think of Hornqvist, Achari, and maybe even Ryan Lomberg as well. But particularly with Hornqvist, he's made a career of this, and also in the playoffs, 102 games, he has 28 Genos. And so I think that he's going to be called upon and maybe a bit of an X factor here in this series. Factor number 4, can the Panthers actually get their power play going? So they didn't actually score a single power play goal against the Washington Capitals. Yes, they drew the 4th fewest penalties per game of any of the 16 playoff teams, but nonetheless, you have to be able to stuff it home once in a while. You have so many weapons out there. And you also have to factor in this. The Lightning against the Maple Leafs, the best power play in the regular season, 85% on the penalty kill, 85.7%. So the Panthers have to find a way to break through or at least draw some penalties to keep the Lightning PK out there and get those guys a little bit tired. So Huberdeau, 5 goals and 33 assists on the power play this year. And Sam Reinhart, who was really big in that series against the Capitals, nearly saved the season himself. He had 16 goals and 15 assists on the man advantage. And then point number 5. I'm going to talk about Steven Stamkos here. He was a little bit quiet in that first round series against the Maple Leafs. Just 2 goals, 2 assists, -2 rating. I expect more from him in this huge, intense rivalry. I think about him as a leader, the captain of that team. He's going to have to will them to win after a grueling 7-game series against a very vaunted Maple Leafs team. They're going up against the best even strength scorers in the NHL in Florida. And this guy did set the example out there for Tampa Bay this year. 42 goals, 64 assists. And so really Stammer, I think, is going to be a linchpin, especially with Brayden Point out, with the center depth kind of taking a blow there. So Stammer, I think it's going to be called upon him to really set the tone for this team, at least for the forward group. And then lastly, my overall outlook on the series. Yes, I already shared with you guys. I do expect the Lightning to win. I think this one is very close here. Again, Tampa's coming off 7 games against Toronto and barely, battling back from 3-2 down to beat them. The Florida Panthers here, I think that they have a lot of confidence now that they found a way to overcome their, shortcomings against the Washington Capitals and really start to identify their brand of playoff hockey. But at the end of the day, I got to say, it comes down to the goaltending. Vasilevsky in Game 7, Game 6 overtime as well. Bobrovsky, yeah, he held it down, but when I think of how Tampa was able to defend as a team, guys like Cirelli and Killorn doing a ton of work in their own end, I just think that they might still be able to withstand one more team as talented as the Panthers are. So anyway, I'm saying that this is a 7-game series. It goes to Florida, but it's ultimately the Bolts going to the conference final. Let me know your prediction down in the comments down below, and stick around. We have all sorts of content and live streams throughout the playoffs, so if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, guys. Remember, that helps others like you discover this channel, and if you want to keep up with me on social media, just see the video description down below. You can also pick up some Twisted Wrister hockey merch if you want to show your support for the channel that way. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Once again, I'm Nick. I'll catch you later, and let's go Panthers. I am cheering for them. Come on, get Jumbo Joe a cup already.